Okay, this is Mrs. Duncan, and we're continuing our discussion, taking a look at some key elements, mythical and symbolic elements of our story, A Worn Path. And so now we're focusing in on this idea of a quest. And you will see this listed on your archetype handout, the hero's quest. And here's the list. We're looking at this as matching up and a way of interpreting the theme and the main ideas of A Worn Path. So in a quest, your central character is looked at as your hero. So even though in all literature stories your central character is called your protagonist, that's a particular role, they may not all be on a journey or a quest, and they may not always be considered a hero. But in this case, with a quest, we would have our central character looked at as a hero. And as we mentioned before, she fits the bill for that. I mean, she overcomes her obstacles. It's a life or death journey that she has to make because she could easily be injured or hurt or killed. And if she doesn't succeed in getting the medicine and returning with it to her grandson, he for certain will die. So she is a hero in all that she overcomes, and certainly is admired by everybody that she meets, even though initially they may have a poor impression of her. Once they get to encounter her resolve and her determination and what she's overcome, they can't help but admire her. And yes, she does indeed have aspect number two. She does go on a journey, and she's gone on it repeatedly. It's a cycle. She has to keep going on this cycle in order to keep him alive. In a quest, you're going to always have these episodes of obstacles. There's always going to be danger. There's always going to be some things or people that are getting your way, whether it's Hercules or a superhero like Superman or Batman, or any of those, Lord of the Rings, Frodo. They're going to have obstacles that they have to overcome on their journey. The mission is always going to be noble. It's not going to be selfish or self-centered. It's not for personal riches. I'm thinking how in the Indiana Jones series that there would be others besides Indiana who was on a journey, a quest to find some artifact, but they would be motivated out of greed or to use it in some personal selfish way, whereas he wanted to, restore it, preserve it, or something else. And the mission of a hero on this kind of quest is always noble. It has a high purpose. It's not selfish. A mystical healing object. Now, this may or may not come up in every journey or quest, but sometimes there's this sort of thing that provides some special supernatural healing. They have these little vials in Lord of the Rings that they are able to heal. It's a gift from the elves, and they give it to one of the hobbits, and he's able to bring it out and help heal one of the other hobbits because he has it while they're on their quest. So it saves them from certain death. And then the difficulty of return. The quest, you reach your destination, but then you got to return home, and that's not easy. And so for Phoenix, going back is just going to be just as difficult as getting to Natchez, and yet it'll probably be getting dark. It might even be more difficult. So we can see that all of the elements of this mythical archetype symbolic quest are easily found, at least all but the mystical healing object. That would be the only one that we go, I don't think that's in there. And you know what? You don't have to have every single one. When you see most of the pattern there, you can say, hey, that fits that mythical kind of quest scenario. Now let's focus in on the character. There's several things going on with Phoenix that stand out. One obviously is her age. She's very, very old. She says she doesn't even know how old she is. She's the oldest person that she knows. But we also know that her age uh, is such that she remembers being a slave. And that's really important in this story. Yes, she's an old lady, and maybe we aren't all there, but she has lived a very, very long life, and she has gone through a lot of ups and downs, but the biggest one is, and look for the the indications of that. It's stated there through subtle clues. I'm going to let you look for them, but there's two times where she says something that indicates that she remembers what it was like before the Civil War was over, when she was a very young girl and she was a slave. She still, however, lives in poverty. We know this because of her appearance. Her apron is made out of sacks, flour, sugar sacks. She gets there to the nurse, and of course she is a charity case, which means she can't afford the medicine, and they just give it to her for free. The senility, that's that aspect of, is she senile? Is she able to discern reality from illusion? Is she, sometimes when we call it today Alzheimer's or dementia, they just call it senility. It's just not having full touch with reality. She hallucinates, and that prevents, or creates a certain barrier for her. But she has a lot of dignity. She feels bad about stealing or taking the nickel from the hunter. She doesn't like being called a charity case. She is humble enough to ask for help for her shoes, but she has the dignity to say, I just can't go into town with my shoes untied. That's just not okay. And so we see that she's not beaten down. She has this optimism and this hope that comes in spite of all the things that she's encountered and endures. Probably the biggest character, like internal character quality that everybody admires, is that in spite of all of these other things, she's so selfless. She is sacrificing potentially herself to get this medicine, thinking only of her grandson. And then we see also her wisdom. She has a wonderful perspective. She's great insight, very, very wise, someone that we would, benefit from what they say and their perspective on life. Let's shift to the setting. Um, I'm not going to go through all these right now, but we do know the time period being the stuck there in between, during the Great Depression, which is certainly worse for African Americans than it is for whites, although everybody is suffering, but they're still recovering from, the Reconstruction and post-Civil War, and having this new status as free, but having no resources. Certainly that's the true of the Southern blacks after the Civil War. She's in a wilderness setting. That's very symbolic. You'll see that in your handout. And, being in the South. So those things are important. They give us, here's a little bit more information about the Natchez Trace. I'd said in the last video it was in the north, but it starts in the north and kind of goes all the way down. It starts in Nashville, Tennessee, and ends up in Natchez, Mississippi, which is, still in the lower part. So it runs a long way. By 1800, it was the busiest highway in the South, but we see when she gets to it years and years later, 100 some years later, it's just, it's abandoned. There's abandoned cabins. There are old ruts. It's not traveled. She doesn't run into any travelers, and so it's got this old historic setting. The significance of the title we've kind of referenced. It indicates this physical journey and then this symbolic quest journey. And so the title here is definitely a clue that there's a lot going on in this path that is worn. She's been through it many times. It also is her life story. Her path, her life path is a difficult, worn path, a path of struggling against poverty and prejudice. And so that's important as well. I almost skipped it, but the setting of Christmas. Now, this is set, in Great Depression, but then the specific time is December and Christmas, and there's an irony because it's supposed to be the time of selfless love. It's supposed to be a time of goodwill, and so some people do for her some good, and we would call them maybe random acts of kindness today, but maybe they're feeling generous and charitable, and you might be tempted to go, well, she doesn't have it so bad. Everybody's really nice to her. But it's kind of combined. She has a very difficult life, and no one does anything that really changes her bigger circumstances. They give her little tokens, things that, just being human, being kind, being civil. And so it's juxtaposed her difficulty in her wilderness, coming into the city, and all the happiness and the joy, and children running around, and Christmas lights, and she's struggling just to stay alive. But there is some hope and optimism. It's certainly not a hard, edgy story. The name Phoenix Jackson, we mentioned this before about Phoenix, the name, but let's just take it another step further. Her name suggests her timelessness, here's a connection to the bird, and the fact that she can never be suppressed, even by those who would try to break her spirit. And that's key, we're getting closer to theme here. Her name also points to the theme of resurrection. Here's that one of those little hints. She was too old at the surrender being Robert E. Lee's surrender, that she didn't get to go to school, and her ritual journey symbolizes her continuous rising up no matter what. Like the bird, she's called Phoenix. So even though she has to overcome that she never had an education and all these other things, it would have been a life changer for her in terms of her poverty and her opportunity. You've got the color symbolism. A golden color runs underneath, yellow burning, red rag, black ringlets. And you should look at the archetype handouts to see what some of these archetype universal color symbols are and see how they relate here. Point of view, POV. Wow, it's third person limited. Let's see what we've had mostly so far. We've had everyday use is first person from the point of view of the mom, Mrs. Johnson. We had Rocking Horse Winner, which is third person limited, somebody outside the story telling us the story and can kind of doesn't know everything but tells us everything they observe. Rose for Emily was real different. Maybe remember from the video about understanding it. The point of view is kind of plural we, and it's like the town, and it takes on. Some people argue it's the women, and other people say no, it can't be because in this scene it's only the men, and so it's there's some disagreement. But in this one, it's third person limited. They kind of tell us what they see. They tell us the story as they know it. And we're able to empathize with her because we see her thoughts and actions. So it's limited, but we also are able to see her thoughts. So it's not omniscient. Omniscient would know everything, but we are able to get the inside track of her thoughts, which is kind of cool. Last slide here, why call her a charity? Well, she is a charity because she is, receiving as a poverty, but the play on the words. Two acts stand out: the giving of the medicine by the nurse, which is for free, an act of charity, and the purchasing of the gift by Phoenix. And she's the only one that gives out of selfless love. It seems like the nurse just does it because that's what the doctor said to do, and it's the right thing to do, so I'll do it. And then, so this idea of who's really being charitable, right? Is it the nurse? Is it the doctor? Is it the people of Natchez? Or is it Phoenix? I like the charitable act of the lady in the street who bends down and ties her shoes. It's a powerful image if you can just visualize that. And the time period in which it's in, and the white woman stooping down below and serving this older African American woman, and I think it's a wonderful image, and that's truly the only charitable expression that you get on that. But other than that, it's just Phoenix. Well, there's another video that kind of takes the story and weaves it together that I think you'll find very interesting that's after this. And these are all set up to help you understand the story better, be able to participate in the discussion better, and certainly to be able to write your essays with an understanding and not being going to other resources. These are the resources to draw from, and they're meant to prompt you to think more deeply about the story. And hope that's helpful to you today.